Aloha and hello. Another fourth string podcast episode. Excited to be back. Appreciate you guys joining us. So I am completely, and it's completely unhealthy. I am completely obsessed with the NFL draft. So I wanted to do an NFL draft special episode. I also want to talk about Malik Willis and everything going on in Tennessee because I think it's crazy. Talk about CJ Stroud's test result because that's insane. And all the stuff happening with Deion at Colorado. They've got something like 51 transfers, which if you're keeping count, 51 transfers, you only have 85 scholarship players on an FBS roster. So 51 transfers is almost a 75% turnover. I know for a program that went 1-11 last year, that might not be the worst thing in the world. But I think it's really interesting. So one of the things that we've been talking about on our podcast for the past, I feel like we've been talking about this for months, is how the transfer portal is not just starting to hurt the sport, it's actually starting to hurt the players that are involved. And when I see 51 players go into the portal, it signals, I think, that we are at the peak. Anytime you have a crisis in a business, in an industry, or anything like that, there's always this chatter. It's kind of like a leaky faucet. It's drip, 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 and then a pipe burst, and there's water everywhere. And when I see 51 transfers, 51 kids leaving a program, that is a pipe bursting. This is not what college football is supposed to be about. It is fine if kids want to get paid. There is nothing wrong with that. But what we have entered into with college football now is this sport is becoming much more of a professional sport, which means, okay, sure, kids are going to get paid, but now coaches are going to treat them like employees. And you come in and you underperform, you're gone. And I mean, that's just it. And it doesn't matter if the kid actually had performed up to what he was recruited to do. It doesn't matter if he had done a really good job. If he's not talented enough to cut into that program to what Deion wants, he's gone. That is not what the sport is supposed to be. The sport was supposed to be a way for kids to earn a college degree while getting a scholarship to play football. And what it is now delved into is essentially becoming like a minor league for the pro level. Now, it's fine that all these kids are going to the NFL. That's great. They should. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you get into now we're paying players, now coaches are not being given any leeway at all. Like, do I blame Deion for having 51 transfers? No. Even if he cut all 51 of those players. Is that really Deion Sanders' fault? No, because that's, again, the way the system was set up. This is what Deion is being paid to do. There's nobody in the world that should blame Deion. Do I blame the transfers or the kids that want to transfer out of Colorado? Absolutely not. That's what they want to do. Again, the system is set up. It is the system's fault that this is happening. And who does it affect? It's going to affect the players. First and foremost, this will affect the players because not all of these kids. In fact, I'd be willing to bet at least half of these kids transferring out of Colorado will not be on an FBS roster by the fall. I'd be willing to bet at least half are not on an FBS roster by the fall. Some will be on FCS. Some may end up going to junior college or going to D2 or something like that. But I bet a lot of them won't be on an FBS roster. Now, that is not because they aren't talented kids. It is simply because when you're trying to bring in a junior that you're going to have to bring into your program, and he's just a little bit more talented, that talented freshman that's coming in, you'd rather bring in the freshman that you can develop and train. This also hurts the fans. You know, part of college football, and I was talking about this with a friend earlier in the week, college sports as a whole, part of what made them great is the simple fact that if you're a fan, you can watch a quarterback come in from high school. And let's say you're a Virginia Tech fan. You watch this kid play down the road from Virginia Tech. Let's just say in Roanoke. And he plays in Roanoke, and he goes to high school there, and he's the prize in-state recruit, and he chooses Virginia Tech. And so you knew him coming out of high school. He goes to Virginia Tech. It's this 18-year-old kid. You see him come in. He gets redshirted. Then you see him the next year. He gets a little bit of playing time, but he's coming off the bench. And then his redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior year, he actually gets an opportunity to start. And you grow up with these kids. That is what makes being a fan of college sports, football and basketball, so great. And when you have kids, and yes, that's my cat in the background, when you have kids that are coming in and transferring after a year or two, the fans are just completely disconnected from the sport. That is not what college football was made to be. And so when I see Deion has 51 transfers leaving his program, listen, that is a big concern for me being a fan of the sport. All right, let's talk about Malik Willis. So Malik Willis at Tennessee, it's funny, a story comes out literally about a month ago that the Tennessee coaching staff is impressed with his progress. Then story comes out literally, or it actually came out 2 weeks ago. It got popular this week where it said Tennessee and Malik Willis are pretty much done. Like that relationship's over. He's turned a lot of people off there, and so now they're out on him. It boggles my mind that a month ago they're all in and they're loving his development, and 2 weeks go by and now all of a sudden they're out. And what it tells me is you have to be careful, and I just knocked my desk there. You have to be careful reading these NFL stories and really trying to find the truth in them. Like, who would have leaked? Who would have gained to leak information about Malik like that? Well, if Tennessee was really out on Malik, if they really wanted to move off from Malik, what would they gain by leaking that story? They wouldn't really gain anything, because if they were off of Malik, they would want to trade Malik. Well, if you're one of the other 31 franchises and you hear this quarterback is no longer good, why would you want to trade for him? You really probably wouldn't, right? So they don't really have anything to gain. Now, I don't know who leaked it. I don't know if maybe Malik is done with that coaching staff. I don't know maybe if it was just some side staff member that got way too talky with Peter King or whatever, but somebody leaked it, and now that probably did sever a relationship. And, you know, the interesting thing that I think about this, and this is what I said last year during the draft with him. People were so excited about him going to Tennessee. And I said, I've got real pause about it, because if he's going to go to Tennessee with Mike Vrabel, look, Mike Vrabel is a defensive guy. He is a no-nonsense guy. He is not the type of guy that's going to put his arms around an offensive project. And let's be honest about Malik. I love him. He was a great player at Liberty, but he is a project. He just is. He was very raw coming into the league. He had a lot of mistakes that he made. Even Hugh Freeze said last year when he was coaching Malik that they would separate the field into thirds when they would game plan. In an NFL game, the players are way too fast, which shrinks the field to be able to separate it into thirds. You can't do that against NFL defenders, against NFL defensive coordinators. That just does not work. You can do it in college. You cannot do that at the NFL. So he had a long way to go. A guy like Mike Vrabel doesn't have the patience to put up with that. He doesn't have the patience to walk through all of those mistakes. He's not going to do that. So when Tennessee selected Malik, I'm sitting there going, well, that's really not a great fit for him. He's going to a franchise where there's going to be real pressure for him to start, because Tannehill, they're not really bought in on Tannehill. So there will be pressure for him to start probably earlier than he needs to. You've got a defensive-minded coach who's not going to give him a good game plan, not going to wrap his arms around him. That's not a great place for him to be. And so I think when you look at these quarterbacks and where are they going, I don't care who gets drafted 1 or who gets drafted, I guess, 31. And this year we've only got 31 picks in the first round. It all depends on where do you go. Like Bryce Young is going to go to Carolina. Well, my concern for Bryce Young is they just moved, for them to get in that spot, they had to move off of DJ Moore. Well, if DJ Moore is not there, who is he throwing to? He doesn't have a good option. The offensive line, it was better last year. It still stinks. So he's going to be running for his life, not throwing to anybody. And he's got a coach. I mean, I like Frank Reich, but this is Frank Reich's second opportunity. If it doesn't work early on from the get-go, you're going to start hearing a lot of chatter. There's going to be a lot of fans that are upset. That's going to put a lot of pressure on a young rookie quarterback. I don't know that that's a great fit for him. Like, honestly, I would probably feel a whole lot better about myself today if I were Will Levis, because Will Levis might be the third or fourth quarterback taken in this draft. That's good. You fall back in this draft, maybe you end up in like a Tampa or somebody like that, where you don't have to worry about being the guy right out of the gate, and you can go to an offensive minded team somewhere. I guess Tampa right now doesn't have an offensive minded coach, but there's other teams that have more of a history of success, that have better playmakers around them, that would give him a better chance. And so I think where you go as a quarterback is everything. And nobody cares if you went number 1 or number 31. Like, nobody cares. Like, do we really think Lamar Jackson, if he had gone number 2 to the Bears instead of Mitch Trubisky, do we really think Lamar would have had the success he's had at the NFL level? No. The reason why Lamar has had any of the success that he's had is because he went to a Ravens franchise coached by John Harbaugh that came in and said, look, we're going to wrap our arms around you. We're going to design a completely different style of offense. It's not been around for 80 years. We're going to run this Notre Dame box style of offense, and we're just going to make this about you, and we're going to figure it out. Other teams don't do that. Tennessee was never going to do that with Malik Willis. Now, I think Malik Willis could be a successful NFL quarterback somewhere, but he's got to go to an offensive-minded head coach that's going to give him time to develop, that's going to be patient with him, and that's going to get creative with him. Mike Vrabel does not give you creative game plans. He's play hard. He's passionate, he yells, and that's fine. It works. He's not a bad coach, but that's not where a guy like Malik Willis is going to find success. All right, let's talk about CJ Stroud's Wonderlic. I don't think it's called a Wonderlic score anymore. What is that called now? It's like a S2 cognitive test, something like that. I don't really understand all of why they're changing it, but whatever. So his test results come out. He scored, by far, he was the lowest scoring quarterback of the bunch. And it was pretty bad. Honestly, when I see these tests, when we would see the Wonderlic scores come out for quarterbacks, I never thought it was everything. And in fact, there was at one point, I can't find it anymore, there was at one point some statistic that if you scored too high on the Wonderlic, that was almost as bad as scoring too low on the Wonderlic. So it's like, what is this test even for? And so I look at these cognitive tests, and I really kind of take them with a grain of salt. However, the problem right now with CJ Stroud, and this is why I could see him falling in the draft tomorrow, is not so much that he scored low on these tests. Keep in mind that a lot of times when these stories come out, the reason they're coming out is because a team is putting them out there on purpose, and they want to see the reaction. Part of the reason why Geno Smith fell so far in that round is because teams wanted to see what was his reaction going to be when some of these things started coming out about him. And his reaction was absolutely awful. So these teams are like, well, we don't want that guy in our locker room. And so now you look at what's happening with CJ Stroud. So these tests come in, they're really low. This gets leaked out to everybody. And his reaction is, well, I don't test well. I just play quarterback. That's not great. It's not great at all, because what you actually just told is the people who came up with this test, so scouts, GMs, owners, coaches, the people who find value in this test, you just said, hey, all of your research, all the work that you've done, what you get paid to do, it doesn't matter. That's not going to go over well. Because if that doesn't matter, well, what about my game plan? Does that matter? What about when I tell you we're going to run the ball 40 times and only pass 20 in a specific game? Are you going to tell me that doesn't matter? Like, are you combative? Are you going to be an issue in the locker room? Are you not going to be coachable? Like, what would have been a much better response from CJ Stroud is, yeah, I scored low on the test. I would love some help to test better. That would be great. Like, coach me to be better. Like, that is what I think any coach would want to see, instead of, oh, well, I just play quarterback. Like, that comes off as arrogant. It comes off as like you're making a mock of the system. You're making a mock of what scouts do. That turns literally every single team that saw that response. I guarantee you every single team looked at that and go, whew, We sure we want to bring that into our locker room? Are we sure we want to bring that into our building? I don't think most teams do. And so the issue with CJ Stroud is not the test result. I mean, that's one thing. We can have that discussion. The issue is the response to the information that was leaked out there. And I thought his response, honestly, was pretty poor. All right. So let's talk a little bit. So, I love the draft. It is literally my favorite sporting event of the year. And I'm not kidding. And I know that may seem lame to people, that my favorite sporting event is watching people get on a telephone. I don't care. I find it fascinating. I find it unpredictable. I love the twists and turns. I love the stories. I will literally watch this thing Thursday. I'll watch it tomorrow. I'll watch it Friday. I'll watch it Saturday. I will not move from my man cave until it is over Saturday afternoon. I guarantee you. And every year, my wife makes this delicious salsa for the draft. She's been doing this, I think, since we've been engaged. She's made it every year for me for the draft. It's homemade salsa. It's the best thing ever. We're going to get some of the fresh chips from Food Line. If there's a Food Line near you, this is not an advertisement. They don't pay me to advertise on the show. Unfortunately, they should. But Food Line Bakery, their tortilla chips, that is where it's at. So we're going to have that. We'll have some homemade salsa. I will literally watch this draft the entire weekend. I am obsessed with it. But I was thinking about this. What would be some absolutely crazy trades that are for sure not going to happen this week? But man, they'd make a lot of sense if they did. Here's the first one I thought of. Matt Stafford to New England and Mac Jones to the Rams. Now, this doesn't involve any draft picks, but I could see this happening. So I don't really understand the reasoning why New England and Bill Belichick are out on Mac Jones. I think he's a good quarterback. He seems to be beloved by his teammates. I don't know what there isn't to like, but there is some disconnect between Bill Belichick and Mac Jones. Again, I don't know what it is. Bill is also at this point, I believe he is 72. Hold on, let's fact check this. I don't have Ben on with me tonight to be able to fact check things. 71. So Bill Belichick, 71. I don't see him coaching for another 10 years. I don't. I see him maybe coaching for another 2 to 3 years. Conversely, I don't see Matt Stafford playing for another 10 years either. I see him playing at a really peak level, probably another 2 to 3 years. And then you have to look at, okay, what are the Rams doing right now with that franchise? Because I think the Rams are in a fascinating spot right now. So the Rams keep on moving off of older players. They moved off of Von Miller. They moved off of Odell Beckham. They just moved off of Allen Robinson. They continue to move off of these older players. And what you're seeing Sean McVay do is actually pretty reminiscent from what Bill Belichick used to do. Belichick used to have this, it just kind of, like it was just one of those things like we always knew Belichick was going to do. He would move off of guys about a year early. And it was always kind of funny. Like you'd be like, wow, like Randy Moss can't play anymore. Well, that's weird. But then they'd maybe have one good year at their new team, and then that would literally be it, and they would completely fade away. It was ridiculous. And I mean, they would just cut guys, they would trade guys. I mean, forever, he would have guys that would come in, be hyper successful. He would trade them to the Browns, and they would completely fall apart. And Belichick, it's really why Belichick became known as the genius that he is because he was moving off of these guys at precisely the perfect moment. And the rest of us were looking at it like, you sure you want to move off of that guy? And every single time Bill was right and everybody else was wrong. And I look at McVay and I'm starting to see a lot of that. He moved off of Von Miller right at the perfect time. Von Miller is starting to age. He moved off of Odell Beckham. Perfect timing. Odell is going to have one more year. I think he moved off of Allen Robinson at the perfect time. And when I look at Matt Stafford, I don't see him hanging on to Matt Stafford for very long. Like I would actually be pretty surprised if Matt Stafford is still the starting quarterback on that team at the start of next season. And here's the other thing, and this is what really got me thinking about this trade. Look at the 49ers right now. The 49ers are all in on Sam Darnold. Now, why are they all in on Sam Darnold of all quarterbacks? Well, it's simple because they have Deebo Samuel, they have Christian McCaffrey, they have why am I blanking on the tight end? Long hair, puts in a ponytail, George Kittle. They've got George Kittle. And this team, they play extremely physical. So if you look at the core of the 49ers, they have literally a window of 1, maybe 2 years before all of these guys are just too old. 1, maybe 2 years. Sean McVay, I think, knows that. And that's why the Niners are so desperate for Sam Darnold. It's because it's like, look, Brock Purdy's not going to be available for half this year. We can't waste. If we only have 2 years of this, we can't waste half of a year not being in a playoff spot because Brock Purdy's not ready yet. We've got to go get somebody that not only is ready, but is a veteran in this league that can win right now. Now, I don't know what type of capacity Sam Darnold has with them. I heard Coward say they're like a Super Bowl team with him. I don't know. I watched Sam Darnold play multiple times, or with multiple teams, rather. I don't know that he's going to improve that much, but I think it's interesting for sure. So if you're Sean McVay, you're looking at this going, okay, well, in 2 years, they're going to have to move off McCaffrey. They're going to have to move off of George Kittle. They're going to have to move off of Deebo Samuel. And what they're going to be left with is Brock Purdy, who was the last pick in the draft last year. So is he looking at this going, okay, we're going to be competitive now, but I'm really trying to build this team to be really competitive in 2 years. So when the Niners are rebuilding, we just completely take over the division. Mac Jones would fit perfectly in those plans. And like Mac Jones, he maybe isn't popped off the page yet, jumped off the page yet. But keep in mind what he did last year was with the defensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator. And he still looked pretty darn good. I would put him in the Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott category. And both of those guys have offensive-minded coaches coaching for them. So could you imagine what would Mac Jones be with Sean McVay as his head coach? I think Mac Jones would be literally a top 10 quarterback in this league with Sean McVay as his head coach. So McVay can move off from Stafford to Mac Jones, and for the Patriots, they could move off of Mac Jones, bring in a vet who's really, really talented, ready to win now. Bill Belichick, you tell him, hey, look, I think this would be Robert Kraft saying, look, Bill, you've been with us for a long time. We've had our differences for sure. I'm going to give you 2 years. After 2 years, we're going to move on. But you have fun the next 2 years. And here's Matt Stafford. I'm giving you a great quarterback. You do what you want with the team over the next 2 years. Let him roll with it. And I think for Bill to get a quarterback that's been around that long, he's going to try and build around that. And you're probably going to be a pretty successful team. That is one trade I see being a win-win for everybody, but I think it'd be crazy. All right, here's the next trade. Jets trade their first-round pick, which, by the way, they have 15th overall, for Mike Evans. Okay, so the Bucs, Tampa, is in complete rebuild mode. They do not have a quarterback. Then the guy that came out of Florida a couple years ago, blanking on his name. He's not the guy. He's just not the guy. They don't have a quarterback. They need to rebuild the offensive line. They actually need to start rebuilding their defense too. Tampa's just in full rebuild mode at this point. They need draft picks. Mike Evans had a bit of an off year last year with them. Seemed pretty disconnected. I think he could use a fresh start. And there's just no reason to keep a 30-year-old wide receiver who's really talented and has value. There's no reason to keep him on a team when you don't have a A to A-plus quarterback, and Tampa does not. So you could trade him now, get a first-round pick. It's going to be the only opportunity you get. For the Jets, they need a first-round pick. They absolutely need a wide receiver because they've got 2 years left with Aaron Rodgers. Mike Evans can give you a really, really good 2 years. The other thing is you've got Garrett Wilson on the other side. Garrett Wilson is your speed guy. He's your burner. Mike Evans is your possession guy. Good luck defending that, right? Like, you're going to have to put your best corner on either the speed guy or put your best corner on the possession guy. Both are elite at what they do. I think that would be really, really difficult for any defense to defend. And for Mike Evans, you won a Super Bowl with Tom Brady. Now you're getting to make a run at Aaron Rodgers. Like, how great of a career is it where you get to play with two Hall of Fame quarterbacks? Not many receivers get the opportunity to do that. That's another one. I think, like, literally, it seems crazy, but if that happened, that's a win for the Bucs. That's a win for the Jets. That's a win for Aaron Rodgers. That's a win for Mike Evans. And it's a win for both fans, by the way. The Bucs, by the way, I think their rebuild would be get 2 to 3 first-round picks this year. Rebuild your offensive line, rebuild your pass rush. Next year, there's like literally next year's quarterback class is going to be one of the best that's ever come in. You've got 2 really elite level quarterbacks. And I mean, I'm not kidding. You might have 5 to 6 guys after that are all going to be capable of starting in this league at some point in their career. I mean, like, it is a really, really good quarterback class. Like Sam Hartman, I think if he were in this draft class, he'd be the 2nd or 3rd best quarterback. Well, he's going to be in next year's draft class, and he's going to be like the 7th best quarterback. Like, that is how much better that class is. So if you're the Bucs, you're going to be terrible this year no matter what. Go get some draft picks. Go get some draft capital. Move off of some of these guys who are not going to be a part of that future, and then set yourself up to get a really talented quarterback next year. All right. Another one. This one would be crazy, but I think it would make a lot of sense. And I got to actually pull something up here to make sure I've got this correct, because looking at this draft order, it's always a little bit insane. What I do with my NFL draft order. Okay. So pick 5. So Seattle has pick 5. Okay. The Baltimore Ravens trade Lamar Jackson to the Seahawks for pick 5 and whatever else capital you want to throw in there. And then the Ravens with pick 5, this would be really interesting. The Ravens could then pick either Will Levis or CJ Stroud. Will Levis would be perfect in Baltimore. It is a physical team. Will Levis is a physical style player. John Harbaugh is a no-nonsense coach. He's been around the league forever. You cannot go in there and boss him around. Will Levis is going to have to conform his game to what Harbaugh wants it to be. But Harbaugh also wraps his arms around quarterbacks and comes up with really, really nice game plans. Same thing for CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, if you're going to score that poorly on the exam, that's fine. But that means you need somebody that's capable of coming up with a really, really good game plan to give that to you. John Harbaugh absolutely does it. For Lamar, he gets to go to Seattle. He gets a fresh start with a players-friendly Pete Carroll coach. That is a great place for him to go. Seattle, they're going to let you do your thing. They don't, like, it's just the northeast part of the country versus the northwest part of the country are almost polar opposites from each other. They're going to let you do your thing. Pete Carroll's not going to care that you don't have an agent. He's going to work with you. In fact, I think Pete almost wants to work with guys that don't have agents. I think that just seems to fit his personality so much better. They're going to pay you, and not to mention you're going to have a great defense on the other side, and they drafted really, really well this past year. Like, you could go to Seattle and be really, really successful. So the Seahawks, they get their guy. They can move off of Geno Smith. They get a guy that can win at elite level. Lamar is going to go from the AFC to the NFC. He's going to get to go be in a much easier quarterback conference with a much more players-friendly head coach. And then for the Ravens, I think they get a guy in either Will Levis or CJ Stroud that they can build around. John Harbaugh now has his plan going forward. You start drafting pieces to piece around that. That's not a bad consolation prize if you're going to move off of Lamar Jackson. And plus, I think if you do that, not only can you go get a nice draft pick this year, but the Seahawks are going to have to give you a couple of other draft picks going forward. And because of their trade with the Broncos, they actually have the picks to be able to do it. Okay, next one, and this one is boring, but actually it's necessary, I think. So the Indianapolis Colts trade down, draft Peter Skoronski. Now the Colts have pick 4. So they draft Peter Skoronski. He is a tackle out of Northwestern. Here's why the Colts need to do this. They were 31st in the league in sacks allowed per game at 3.5 sacks. I know they're high on Will Levis, and I know they want a quarterback badly. I get it. Jim Irsay, he's been owner for a long time. It felt like they finally had all the pieces, and then Andrew Luck retires. Like, I cannot even imagine being a Colts fan with that happening. So I know they are anxious and desperate to go get a quarterback. But here's the thing. There's not a quarterback in this class that is capable of having success with that offensive line. There just isn't. And the Colts last year, keep in mind, it was Matt Ryan starting for them. Matt Ryan's not a quarterback that is sack happy. He's not running out of the pocket and getting sacked. Like Lamar does that, not Matt Ryan. So literally the reason why your team was so bad at giving up sacks is just because the offensive line was pathetic. They've got to fix that. What I think would make a lot more sense is getting Peter Skoronski. He's a really talented tackle out of Northwestern. Bring him in, and then next year you're in prime position. Now, you're not trying to, it's not the Suck for Luck campaign 2.0. It's not that, but you are in prime position to go get a quarterback in next year's draft. And again, I think they'd be a top 2 pick going into next year. So you're going to get a Caleb Williams. You're going to get a Drake May. And if you bring one of them in and you've already shored up part of your offensive line, so bring in Peter Skoronski, let him be your right tackle, go get a left tackle. Now you've got your pass protection, and you've got your quarterback. And by the way, you don't want to bring in a rookie quarterback this year with a rookie head coach. Let that head coach get his footing. Let him figure things out. And then next year, then bring him a rookie quarterback that he can actually take time to build. This year, he just needs to figure out what is his style, what's his game plan, what is he going to be, what's the team going to be. He's not going to have time to figure that out if he also has to pay attention to either Will Levis or CJ Stroud. So Colts, trade down, go get Peter Skoronski, shore up your offensive line. All right, here's the last trade that I would propose. By the way, I feel like I'm a genius for coming up with this. Nobody's going to throw this out there, which is why it's not going to happen, but it should. The Los Angeles Chargers should trade Brandon Staley. I know you're chuckling. I laughed at it too. Brandon Staley and 2 picks to the Ravens for John Harbaugh. Okay, here's the thing about this. Brandon Staley is not your guy. Now, I understand not wanting to fire him because he took you to the playoffs. Now, you did fire Marty Schottenheimer years ago after going like 14-2 and getting to the playoffs. So I don't know how we can make sense of that. And then you bring in Brandon Staley and you go like, was it 10-7, 9-8, and you get in and you keep him after losing in the wild card the way you did. Just don't get it. But regardless, he's not the guy going forward. He is not elevating Justin Herbert's game at all. And Justin Herbert is just too talented of a quarterback to have that as his head coach for the next several years. Now, Brandon Staley might be a decent head coach. We don't know. But if the Ravens brought him in and he didn't work, who cares? If he's that bad, if they don't have Lamar Jackson, then guess what? The Ravens are going to have a really good draft pick. And you're going to get, again, with this trade, you would get 2 picks from the Chargers. Presumably, those would be 2 first-round picks from the Chargers, which then you can use to go completely rebuild this team. I'm talking you get your quarterback next year, you figure out your offensive line, you get another really nice receiver, you can go add a really nice corner, and really the next 2 years, if you're the Ravens, they're kind of throwaway years anyways. Because the AFC is just so brutally tough. The quarterbacks in the conference are so brutally tough. Like, I think the Ravens need to go and spend the next 2 years just rebuilding that team. So, yes, this would be hitting the blow-up button on the team the way it is right now. But if Lamar leaves, are you not hitting that anyways? And if he stays, what if he's not playing? Like, what if this is Kawhi Leonard of the NFL where you got him on your roster, but he's just sitting there and he's not playing? I'd rather go ahead and move on. I'd rather say, okay, John Harbaugh, we love you. You've been here forever. We got to move on from this thing. So we're going to trade you to the Chargers, Go be great there with Justin Herbert. We're going to rebuild our team. We got to completely redo this thing. We're going to give Brandon Staley 1 year's chance. If it doesn't work out, he's gone. And then you go in and you get that top coach that's available next year. Maybe you go get Lincoln Riley and you can bring him in with Caleb Williams. I mean, there's a lot of different opportunities that I think would be available to them. But if John Harbaugh is your coach, he's such a good coach. You're just not going to be in a position to be in the top 3 or top 4 of that draft to go get one of those top quarterbacks next year. So if Lamar's going, you got to figure out who's the next guy coming in. Okay. I realize I have the Ravens in here twice, and it both revolves around the quarterback and the coach. Okay. I'm excited for the draft this week. I think it's going to be a blast. My Panthers have the number 1 pick. I think it's going to be Bryce Young. It should be Bryce Young. Honestly, at this point, and I've been saying it like since the start, Bryce Young's just the best all-around quarterback available in this draft. He might be the best all-around player, honestly. Now, was he an A-plus prospect? No. He's about an A-minus prospect, which is why I wouldn't have done the stupid trade to move out, but we're past it. But, like, if you were to compare Bryce Young and put him in next year's draft, he might be the 3rd or even the 4th quarterback taken, but he's good. He is a better, much better quarterback than anybody in last year's draft. Any quarterback in last year's draft. In fact, I'd maybe say the past couple of drafts. He's one of the best that's been available. So I think he can work. I think the Panthers can win with him, but you're going to have to give him pieces. And you're going to have to figure out the offensive line thing. You're going to have to figure out the height thing. And, man, Frank Reich better work. Because if Frank Reich comes in and he's not the guy, I think Bryce Young's going to look really tough early on because there's just not a lot of help on that roster. All right, guys, this is the 4th String Podcast. We'll be back some point next week. Me and Ben will be back on. Lots of college football stuff happening. These spring games are absolutely hysterical with the overreactions, and I love it. People are like, oh, my God, Texas is going to be amazing. They looked amazing in their spring game, except everybody in these spring games had a bunch of transfers happen after the spring game. So what do we really know about these teams? I don't think we know a whole lot. So we'll be back next week, me and Ben, to break down all of that. You guys have a good night. Enjoy the draft.